Hello, this is Dear Damson, and today I am going to do a winter scene, and we're going to do 3 snowman and a few little elements on the side to fill in the space. But the most important thing is I will show you how I'm using masking fluid. And pretty much masking fluid is it's liquid when it's wet, and when it dries it turns into rubber that you can peel off the paper. So what I'm gonna do here is first we're gonna sketch, but before we begin, please don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you get notifications from my future videos. And I am really fast sketching 3 balls on top of each other for each snowman, and then just putting a few little accessories like scarf, hats, earmuffs, eyes, nose. So all of those will be simple shapes. We have semicircles for the body, pretty much top to bottom, and then we'll have ovals, rectangles, or triangles for the rest of the pieces. And we're gonna have little sticks for their hands. On the side I'm going to do fans, and pretty much we have elongated rectangles connected with another rectangle behind, and pretty much that's it. We're going to do 2 little birdies. That's not necessary, you can skip that, but the birdies have a circle for their body, a little trapezoid for the tail, starting small and spreading out, going away from the body, and circle for the head. And then I'm just gonna add two lines for legs and 2 lines for the beak. So whatever brush you decide to use for your masking fluid, it's going to be only for masking fluid, because once the fluid gets into the bristles it's really impossible to remove it, so it ruins the brush. So don't use your best brushes for that. Now, if a little accident happens, like a little bit more than you want, like right here, you can either scoop it out and wait until it dries a little bit and then rub it off, because that's the whole idea of a masking tape. You can really easily remove it when it dries. Now I did erase most of the lines, but I will have a traceable for you guys on my Facebook page, so you can go and get that from there. It's absolutely free. And the first thing I'm doing is using super light blue, adding a little bit of shadow on the ground, which is covered with snow, but it is dark night, so I added a little bit darker I guess snow or shadow on the ground. And then I'm using lighter blue to add the shadow on the actual bodies of the snowman. So you're going to see more shadow on the every part that's connected. On the bottom part it's connected to the top, like the first ball is going to get a shadow on the top, same goes as the second one, and then I'm putting a shadow right underneath and around the scarf. So I'm gonna use really bright colors for the scarves, and obviously the top hat's gonna be black, and we're gonna have yellow, we're gonna have bright blue, and we are going to have orangey yellow, so reddish orangey and yellow orangey. And obviously the nose is going to be very bright orange. So what I'm doing for the scarves is I'm applying tiny little lines next to each other, so it makes it look more like it's knitted scarf. It's handmade scarves. And now I'm going to do the top hat. I am going to emphasize on the shadow on one side of the hat and leave a little bit of a white area on the other. So for the top hat, I will have a more black on one side, and my black is still transparent, so it's a little bit grayish, but I will add a few layers of that, so I'm gonna emphasize on the hat a little bit more. So a lot of times when I paint with watercolor, I will start with super transparent color of the color that I want, and then little by little I'm gonna move into the direction or the strength of the color that I want to see. So it's much easier to add on than take away. So that's why I'll be starting with very, very light colors. I'm gonna do the same thing for the nose. I'll have one side a little bit more emphasized on the color, and the other side is a little bit more pale. Same for the buttons. I will have more color on the one side than the other, and you're gonna see I'm starting with a very light brownish ochreish color, and that's gonna be our fence. We could have gone a little fancy with the fence, but I just kept it simple and easy. So the little fence is going to have connections in between on top and the bottom. You can do one, you don't have to do both of those. So pretty much we're starting with, again, super light base. And I am going to slightly add a few lines to emphasize on the shape of those pieces with a little bit darker color. So the colors for the fence that I'm gonna use, starting with ochre and mixed with a little bit of brown, and also I'm going to add black into my brown and or ochre so I can create this darker color of brown. And this is more like illustration, so you can always outline. Now we're going again for the shadowy parts, so we're adding a little more shadow underneath or around the elements. And the buttons are just simple buttons. I will leave a little bit of white tiny dots in the center. You could have you could use masking fluid for the little every area that you want to leave white, but to me that was unnecessary. I think the most important thing was keeping the snowflakes in the sky super clean, because our sky is going to be much darker. So I colored this scarf red, and now I'm gonna go with a little bit darker red, the same way I did for the blue scarf. So I'm going to add tiny little lines next to each other to create the stripes. So the stripes are going vertical and my lines are going horizontal next to each other, so it creates a really cool effect. And obviously on that piece is falling sideways, so we are switching direction. We're gonna add a few lines kind of spreading out on the end of the scarf to give us the illusion of fringe. And on the hat, we're gonna add a little bit more shadow. Same, I'm gonna go around with every dark area and add some of that shadow. So the brush that I'm using, it's number 4, so it has a pretty good tip. So if I need tiny little dots, I can do that, no problem at all. So I'm adding Ice and Smile with tiny little dots of black. Now one of the snowman does not have eyes showing, so they're hiding underneath the hat. So that's the second shadow that I'm applying, a little bit darker. And a lot of times I'll use water and kind of soften the edge. Just like that. So pretty much with the water, I'm reactivating that paint, but it's still going to have a little bit more sharper edge where my original brush stroke was, but I still going to steal part of that paint and create a little bit of a softer edge. So the muffs, what I did is I did tiny little dots next to each other, almost next to each other. I left a little space because it's going to make them look fluffy, and then I will add a little bit of a darker color, which is kind of a transparent black later on, so it has like a shadow, and obviously some parts will be left white on those parts, so it's going to look very fuzzy for the earmuffs. Now I left the blue scarf to dry completely because what I'm adding on the blue scarf is yellow paint, and I really did not want it, the yellow and the blue, to mix together because it will create green. So I really wanted the blue to be completely dry before I get in with the yellow. So this little guy will have a vest on, but we can only see one side, so it's just one side showing, and it looks like a trapezoid. The snowman in the middle, the hands are hiding behind. So you see like a tiny little stick on the left side and showing a little bit of the end of the hand on the top of the snowman on the right. And now I'm adding a little bit of black dots. So now it looks fluffy. And I connected the earmuffs a little bit further away from the head, so there's a space between the that line on top that holds the earmuffs and the head. So you're gonna see me going a few times and adding outlines with darker colors or a few little spots on the fence and making it more woody looking. The yellow scarf is still wet, so when I added this orange dots, they burst out and it created a really cool effect. And we can add another hand here. And it's just a stick, make it a little bit wider on the part where it's getting close to the body and thinner on the part where it's away, and then just put a few little sticks in an angle going away from that stick. emphasizing again on just a few areas where I feel like that element is disappearing. So I added a tiny bit more shadow on the bottom circle of the snowman and the kind of like, if you say, corner, because the bottom part is flat on the ground. So the birdies, they are not going to have too much details because they're way too tiny, so they're just filling in the space. I'm going to make them blue and a little bit red. I'm adding the fringe on this part of the scarf, and that part wasn't wet enough, so my orange little bursts did not look as good, so I'm going to reactivate it and put a little bit of orange and leave it alone, so it creates that bursts of orange inside that is darker than the original color of the scarf. Adding more color here and there, just punching things out. So anything that you feel like it needs a little more weight, add more color to it, or add a shadow to it. So like here, I'm adding shadow just to make that part stand out a little bit more, and it looks so much better. Outlining a little bit, that will help. A few lines on the nose. The nose is too tiny, so I feel like if you don't add those lines, it's still gonna be okay. I'm going to add shadows around the scarves. I'm using very transparent bluish black. I tried to add a little more yellow here, and it does work, so it looks great. It pops out, it looks happy. So now with much darker brown, I am moving to the fence, and you can see how I'm going around different parts of the painting because I'm just waiting for something to be ready to add another layer or add element that's too close to something that it's wet. So I'm waiting for things to dry while I'm working on something else. So pretty much is, instead of just waiting, I am moving around the painting, and that makes it much easier. Little bit of outlining with a super transparent black. I'm gonna go around, add more shadows. So anything that doesn't pop out, just go in. Anything that is getting lost into another piece, add in a little line. Like the hat, like the scarves, like the sticks. Little hands, a little more weight. But pretty much I used all the colors in my paint set. So now I'm gonna add the orangey reddish on the birdie. And then I'm gonna make a little tiny dot for an eye, 2 sticks for the legs, and 2 kind of sticks but very small for the beak. So I'm gonna start with the sky. Now our masking fluid is dry, and that's the most important part when we are using it, to let this thing dry before we go in that area. So me covering this with blue, and I'm using wet on dry technique, and just because I have a lot of elements there that I don't want them to get watered down. But then I'm moving kind of with water in certain areas because it does look a little cloudy on certain parts, or I have a lot more color on areas and I need to kind of blend those. So it's not a problem if the sky is not just one perfect color. It's okay to be kind of cloudy looking. And I'm trying to go around those little bumps, but they're keeping the water and the paint out of there. And we cannot remove the masking fluid right away. We have to wait for this to dry so we can peel it off. Because if it doesn't dry, the paint is not dry, then the masking fluid also collects paint on the top, and while you're rubbing it off, you will transfer it to the area that you were trying to mask. So I'm gonna go around the hands a little bit quicker, and some of that brown's gonna start disappearing. So once it dries a little bit, I'm gonna add those hands back in because our little lines on the ends are very, very thin. It doesn't hurt to add one more layer of shadow. Now, if you want to add another element to your sky, you can just pour a little bit of salt on it, and that will create another fun way or fun look. It's a very cool technique. So make sure your blue is a little more dry when you're trying to add back those hands. I'm gonna go and outline a little bit the birdies because we wanted them to be dry before we do anything, and add a little more orange to their body. And while we're waiting for this blue to dry, I am just going to put a really fast signature here, but pretty much we are done with that. So let's reveal what happens, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you get notifications for my future videos. But this is how it looks, and it is something I don't use a lot, but sometimes it's fun to use it. So I will put it in the description below with a link if you're interested. And that's it. We have snow. Alright, enjoy this one and happy painting. Thanks for watching. Bye.